So, welcome back to our next episode. Thank you for visiting New Vision Spiritual Centered channel. I'm Jason. I want to continue what we were talking about last week because I feel like it needs a second episode to kind of wrap up what we started with the overcoming fears, how to and what to do with all that information that we talked about last week. So hopefully, if you watched the last video, you spent some time asking yourself all the why questions. If you didn't see it, this is your first time here. Basically, what I was saying was in order to discover what's going on, to figure out. Fear. Well, my biggest issue is fear and overcoming being afraid of talking to you on camera and getting up in front of people. And I own a church, and what kind of minister or pastor or minister, guidance or teacher is afraid to get up in front of people, right? So I've discovered this method using the universal teachings that have really helped me get a grasp on how to overcome my fears, and this method can be used for overcoming any shortcoming or issue that has been going on and has you not living your best life, right? So hopefully you've spent some time with yourself, going within, asking yourself the why questions, doing some self-analysis. And then what did you come up with during the why question exercise, right? Were you able to boil it down and to discover what the kernel of truth is? And once you've discovered what that kernel of truth is, you can continue to go even further, boil it down deeper, and eventually what will come up is a specific incident or a situation or a conversation or something that somebody told you or something that happened to you or me, a conversation perhaps where you received a bad experience that really had an impact on you. And then that specific incident moves on to shape the rest of your life, whether you know it or not. Subconsciously, there is a piece of information that is implanted into your consciousness that then shapes how you see the world, right? So what am I talking about? So what I wanted to do is use an example out of my own life to show you what I'm getting at here. How I'm using this teachings as a way to reconstruct my own inner being, right? So because once you have found this inner seed, this inner kernel of bad programming, you can remove it and then and rewrite it and change your programming, right? But until you find it and figure out what it actually is and where it came from, it's always going to be there, no matter how much self-help you do, no matter how much meditation, no matter how much. It's kind of like the princess and the pea, right? You can keep putting things on top of it, but the pea is always going to be there, making you uncomfortable for some reason. So we have to find out what the pea is, And once you've found that seed, you can remove it and it can change your programming. And once you find it, it can change your thought patterns. So what am I talking about, right? So I'm going to use an example out of my own life of something that I've meditated on that will kind of illustrate what I'm talking about here, okay? In order to crystallize this moment that I received my faulty programming and so I can eliminate it. Okay. So, getting into just to kind of back up a little bit. So I did a moral inventory on myself, and if you can refer to the previous video in the Overcoming Fears part 1, after my fearless moral inventory that they call it in the rooms or at AA or NA, I realized that there have been several key moments in my life that have planted seeds of fear and self-doubt in me that have in turn colored and influenced all of my decision making and all of my life choices from that period forward. Okay. So I always say kernel of truth because the analogy is like a piece of information or a piece of computer code almost. It's like that gets planted and then grows and manifests itself in our lives like a weed, right? So here's my story, right? I grew up as a latchkey kid. I don't know if people know what that is anymore, but I grew up without any parents in the home. It was just me and my mom. My mom worked all the time. I was alone. Too much. I had too much time, too much alone time on my hands, right? My mom worked all the time. I barely saw my dad on weekends. So I had way too much time on my hands. And fending for myself and getting into all kinds of trouble. We'll just leave it there. And at the time, I thought I had the greatest life. I was a kid on my own. I was doing whatever the hell I wanted. You know, my mom was gone to work by the time I left for school in the morning. And she didn't come home until far into the evening. So I had way too much time alone on my hands to try to figure life out, right? And it was like almost like a Peter Pan existence. There was no adult supervision, right? But it always kind of, whether I knew I wanted that or not, it always kept me searching for family. I always kind of gravitated to friends that had a bunch of older brothers and sisters or huge families. And I always kind of wanted to be part of that because I didn't have any of that at home, right? And so one time I went to one time I went to a friend of mine's house, and around dinner time, I always would show up around dinner time, you know, and their family was all together and horsing around the table and arguing and fussing at each other and just being a family, you know, fighting amongst themselves and arguing and talking and just interacting. And I remember I was standing outside the window and I was looking in on it, and I just remember having this thought, for whatever reason it was. I remember saying to myself, you're alone. You are not part of them. You are not good enough. You don't deserve that. You're not good enough. And then it shook me so much that I'm like 9 years old at this time, I guess, around 9, 10. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but it shook me, I don't deserve these. I don't deserve that. It wasn't my family. I don't have a family. You know what I mean? And I just remember feeling like a separateness, a lonely feeling. Afraid of being that I was alone. I don't know. It was a strange sensation, but something shifted in me. Even as an 8 or 9 year old kid, it affected me, right? And so I haven't thought about that in years, right? But after doing this exercise, so kind of backing up a bit, when I was doing my questions, my why, it was, why am I putting things off? What am I afraid of? Why do I procrastinate? Why do I avoid? What are my avoidance behaviors? And I'm trying to overcome all my, victim mentality, like what's my part in all this? And so as I'm asking myself why, I would come up with, I would reveal a deeper layer and a deeper layer and a deeper layer and a deeper layer, right? And so when I finally boiled it all down, after writing down all my why questions with my paper and meditating on it and thinking about it and really kind of sitting with it, I came up with the I'm afraid, fear. And what I'm so then, and I have doubts in myself. I'm afraid I'm not good enough. I'm afraid of being alone. All of these things, right, are all swirling around inside. But it's subconscious. It's one of those operating systems that I'm not even thinking about consciously, right? So how do you access that information? Well, what you do is, once I boiled all of that down, all of the why questions about my accountability, my moral inventory, I come up with my seed, my original kernel, which is I am afraid. I guess that'll be the boiled down version, the pee in the bed, not the urine, but the pee on the layers of The Princess and the Pea. So once you come up with that, you go into it, right? You go into those feelings of self-doubt and fear, and you go deeper, and you realize the instant that moment was created, right? Like, it took me a long time to do this. It takes some practice and some time with yourself and meditation. But when you're thinking about why am I afraid over and over and over, and you sit with it, and it takes practice, and you got to be patient, because it's not going to come right away, but eventually it will. It's like all these files were going through in my head, and like all of a sudden I was having memories, childhood memories that I haven't thought. I'm 53 years old. I haven't thought about in 30 years, 40 years. And I had these feelings and these flashes and these memories of all these different things that have happened to me in my life, and conversations I've had and interactions I've had with people. And then I came upon that memory of me standing outside, looking into that window and seeing my friend's family interacting with each other, and me wanting that, but not being part of it, being separate from it. And so once I had that realization, wow, there it is. That's the moment that programming that was put into my head, that is where it all comes from, right? And so once I figured that that's where it come from, all of a sudden it like crystallized into this, okay, I understand, crystallized into an understanding and an insight. Remember, we were talking about insights and understanding, and how that spearheads you into being able to change your perceptions and become a higher, better version of yourself, right? And so I realized in that moment, when I look back and I talked to that little 8-year-old kid inside, and I realized that was the catalyst for all of it. And how like some innocent little thing, a little innocent thought, can compound itself and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow into this profound, deep seated fear that can manifest in ways that can totally change the outcome of my life. Like, by putting things off, by procrastinating, by not doing something, by avoiding something, by not doing something because I'm doubting myself because I feel like I don't deserve it, but deep in my subconscious, right? So so now what do I do with it, right? So now what happens? So now the thing is when you ask the why questions over and over until you boil it down into a concept, I am afraid, right? Once you have done that work and you realized I have an underlying issue that's affecting my life's trajectory, you're halfway there. Keep going. Because when now you're thinking about it, right? And now you meditate on, okay, I have this issue. I am being accountable. I am no longer being. I'm not no longer having a victim mentality. I recognize my part in it. Where is this all coming from? And you sit with that, and that's part two. That's when you meditate on that, and you gain the awareness of finding the point of where that got introduced into your computer program, right? And you have to sit with it, ask why again, be patient, honest with yourself, and eventually the memories will start to flash. And at some point in your meditation, the specific memory is going to come up about a conversation or an incident or something that happened, a teacher, a breakup, something happened as a kid, something that you saw that you shouldn't have, and you will just know, oh, that's what it is. That's the piece that I need to put together in myself. That's the thing that planted this seed that has grown into my fears, right? And so once you have it, it is going to crystallize into intelligence and understanding. You will have found that root cause of why you behave the way you do and why these patterns everything kind of clicks into place, like the dominoes falling. It's like, oh wow, that's why that pattern is repeating in my life over and over. And that's going to be a theme that we're going to talk about on this channel, is patterns and what they mean, what they really mean, and the deeper meaning of these patterns and these behaviors and why we do what we do and why we really do it, right? And so all of this is in order to contact with our source, our highest self, our, God, the universe. I make no judgments here. The whole concept of God is much bigger than I am. So I just want to be a part of that creative force and I co-create my reality with God. And so I want to rewrite the program after I debug my software, right? So as you can probably, if you haven't yet kind of picked it up, our minds, our brains are like, it's like a computer, right? And as a matter of fact, computers have been modeled and created mimicking how the brain functions. And we'll get into that in the next video because it's important to understand what our minds and brains actually are, as far as co-creating reality around us and how it attracts things into our lives, their mind and brain. And so that's for the next video. But before I end for today, I want to say a big thank you to my uncle, Michael Schwartz. He is one of my great mentors, and he has taught me so much with his books and his concepts and his introduction to me into the idea of universal teachings and what the universal teachings are. And I'm another one of the focuses of this video, of this channel, is going to be how we use the universal teachings to figure out these patterns in our lives, apply the universal teachings and apply these deprogramming and reprogramming, debugging concepts to live our best life and our highest self and channel our best possible selves for us, for our own journey, and also for our families and the people we care about. So I just want to say thanks. I'm going to cut it off here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. See you next weekend. Thanks a lot.